Hello, welcome to Unbearable 73. My name is Matt. In this episode, I will be reviewing Book 3 of the Riddlemaster trilogy by Patricia A. McKillip, which is Harpist in the Wind. That's the title you see of the three books. You see the cover up there. First note: in order to review this book, I will need to drop some spoilers for the first and second books, including a couple of heavy ones. I'm not going to spoil the whole plot, but it's kind of talk about the third book if you don't want to talk about the first and second book. Second note, I previously read Book 1, The Riddlemaster of Head, and Book 2, The Heir and Fire. I'll add links down below, and hopefully there'll be some cards at the end for that. Third note, in the first video, I discussed Patricia A. McKillip in way more detail than I'm going to cover here. So if you want to rehear that information, go back and watch the first video. So, again, as I mentioned, in order to read Harpist in the Wind, I have to do some spoiler, some particular heavy ones. So if you haven't read the book yet, haven't read the first two books yet, don't stop right here and don't watch any more of the review. We left at the end of Book 2 with Raiderly having asserted her participation in her relationship with Morgan, essentially saying, "You're not leaving without me," but in much better terms than I just put. They're a new couple, and the point was they established they're going to confront the world and deal with it and the challenge they're facing as a couple together. Events have begun to coalesce, and the disparate powers at play around the realms had been intermixing now, as opposed to just being emerging in the first book. Morgan had emerged as a power in his own right, capable of affecting even the land rule, as we learned, as he stole power back from Crystal Witch alone. Death had been fleeing from Morgan across the realms as the rulers reached Kingdom side of Morgan and barred death from the realms. I have the map up there, and if you note, Lone Star Mountain is up here. It is at the upper left-hand corner, and the path of fleeing was westward first through Isig, Mount Isig Mount, then to Osterland, and then down the coast and so forth. So basically, the way that Morgan and Death tend to travel there is the way Death fled and Morgan follows him. Okay, if you understand, I like to emphasize the map so you understand. I find if you memorize the map and keep it at hand while you're reading a book, it helps you understand what's occurring a lot better with authors who are better about following their own maps and their own self-encyclopedias and whatnot, their Bible, if you will, of how the story is constructed. Okay. In a certain sense, Book 1 and 2 had rather similar plots. Book 1 was Morgan's awakening of his power and struggling with his identity, and this was mirrored in many respects in Book 2 with Raiderly's journey through similar issues. Miss McKillip established themes that knowledge of the self is a critical element in exerting magical power. That was firmly established in both books. This series has multiple examples of the riddlery that the various Riddlemasters engage in. I haven't used many of the examples here. I do provide one later, a big one, because out of context they don't make much sense, and in context are very heavy spoilers. But you see the lore of the riddle. She does specifically create the riddle making and the structure of it in the novels. People reading through the first books might just see these riddles as being part of the background lore, but remember them. She reveals things without spoiling too much in the third book. The things she reveals as the characters answer those riddles affect the outcome. They're not direct callbacks, they're indirect callbacks. She pieces together something in the first two books, so that what happens in the third book, if you pay attention, you get a lot of you learn a lot more about the events of the third book than you really think you did. And I found you don't notice this until you've read the series a second time, having known the end and going back, oh, whoa, that means that too, essentially. And lastly, before I directly discuss Harpist in the Wind, just so you aware who the characters at play are in a little summary. So there's Morgan, who was the Riddlemaster of Head, so to speak, who's emerged with his powers, and he's still learning how to use them, but he's clearly established. Then Raiderly of An, who has begun to emerge with all powers, but is still doubting them to an extent. And Death, the Harpist of the High One. He is, who we learned is really Gwistalichum's Harpist, who you did not see as a character from his perspective in either of the first two books. And you might think the third book, since he is a main character, would be from his perspective, and it's not. His story is told from the perspective of Morgan and Raiderly. Then, of course, Gistilus, it's a very hard name to pronounce, who is the founder of Lungold and the destroyer of it, and all for his quest for the riddle of the stars. The mysterious shape changers who are waging war in Immers. And an off-screen, of course, is the High One. So those are our major characters and powers floating around. So what is Harpist in the Wind about? Well, the original cover to the paperback, which is up, I'm showing you on the screen, the third one up there, clearly shows you one thing: a harpist harping. So yeah, there's a harpist harping. I mean, not to make it sound, but it's more layered than that. And you might notice this on the first pass through of the novels. You should notice it by the third time you read these books. The title of that book is way more in depth than it seemed the first time I read it. But then again, I read it the first time when I was 6 or 7. So while I was very intelligent and had an adult reading level, maybe I have adult comprehension. So take that caveat as you will. Harpist in the Wind opens with Morgan and Raider sitting out on their journey together. The journey is explore their identities and their powers that both seem to be awakening. And while Morgan is more settled in his identity, he still is fearful of it, and he still is resentful of it. But he's settled in it. He knows he's the star bearer, and he knows he has these powers, and he feels more driven by it than he is embracing it. Okay? And if you want to know what the next part of Morgan's journey is, in general terms, that's kind of what this book is about. A feature of this book. Raiderly is at an earlier stage where she's accepted that she has these powers, still fears them, and is still resistant to them at the beginning of the book. Now, another thing to know about Harpist in the Wind is that the pacing of the book, and you got gradual increases as the time passes. The pacing was largely the same in the first two novels, and in the third one, by the end of it, it was much faster. Not so much that more time occurred in less writing, so to speak, but that the sense of urgency increased a lot, which drew me into it in a way. When I on rereads of Harpist in the Wind, I find myself almost beginning to both anticipate and dread the end, because I'm anticipating it because I enjoyed it, and even this time through, I picked up another detail on something which I can't talk about in this non-spoilery review, but that's in the sense that I enjoy it. But I dread it because it's the end of the novel and the series coming faster and faster, and I don't want it to end. I want more, which I will get to later, which is a good thing. So in book one, and here I will out the real riddle. In book one, Har of Osterland gave Morgan 5 riddles. Who is the star bearer, and what will he lose that is bound? What will one star call out of silence, one star call out of darkness, and one star out of death? Who will come in the time's ending, and what will he bring? Who will sound the earth's harp, silent since the beginning? Who will bear the stars of fire and ice to the end of the age? In some sense, you've gotten to some answers to these questions as the books have progressed, but they're not necessarily the answers you think you have, and that is essentially Mrs. McKillip telling you what this final book especially is about. Those questions will be answered. They'll be answered very well, and the partial answers you have will be explored in greater depth. And I'll conclude by going over my 5 questions that I always do about any book or media property, and I'll call them up one by one on the screen so we can so you can see the question with me. So question 1: at its conclusion, does this book make me wish I had more to read, or does it make me wish that had been shorter, or that I wasted my time? Yes, at the end of this book, I wanted more. I wished he had done a follow-up in some capacity to this world. This end of the book, all plot threads are tied up. You have open questions in terms of the lore of the world, and like, well, what if this happens, type of thing. But you don't want more books to tie up loose plot threads. You want more books to explore the setting, the rich setting Mr. McKillip created. So that's definite. So number 2. Do I hate the portrayal of the primary characters? Hell no. I love almost every character in the book. I mean, there's 1 or 2 minor characters who are a little annoying. And by I say love, I mean I even love the villains. They're very well portrayed villains. They're not moo-ha types, which is good, because this is not a sort of casual villain. This novel needed serious villains, and it had them. The series, I should say. So number 3. Did the writer annoy me with moronic writing gimmicks like ending every single chapter on a cliffhanger or never fully resolving the plot thread so as to build a fake sense of mystery? Nope. Loved everything that happened in the series. Every plot thread in the novel that directly relates to the plots and sequence of events and all that. The 5 questions, the riddle of the stars we just talked about, they're tied up. You have no questions about what's going to happen in terms of is there an enemy running loose? Is some servant running loose or whatever? You know your answer. You know those answers. Number 4: is this book preaching at me? Meaning, is it telling me I need to change something about my life as its actual plot? No. There's no preaching. There's just wonderful prose. You can learn a lot of lessons from some of the moral points Mrs. McKillip raises in this novel about power, the use of power, about self-identity. Not enough people actually try to find their actual self-identity. They just kind of wander through life not knowing themselves and therefore not knowing what's going on around them. And question number 5: are there any deal-breaker moments, meaning something so weird happens that I lose my suspension of disbelief and can't get it back? Nope. The complete opposite. Reading this book and this series draws you deeper and deeper in. Every little bit that comes together, like in the second book, there's a point where all the disparate bits of knowledge about Gristolitum and Master Ohm and what's been going on for the past couple of 100 years and all that, they come together at a certain point. All the characters know things separately, share them together, and you're with them, and that leading to a deeper immersion into the events going on. As they learn, you learn, and you're drawn further in with them to the mysteries they're confronting. And that's just an example. There's countless points like that where you're drawn further into the story, or your suspension of disbelief actually almost feels like it's not enough at points. Like if they could ever do like a VR experience where you could sort of look through Morgan's eyes as he goes through the novel, or Raiderly's eyes and so forth, this will be the one for it if they could capture this setting in that, because this is a setting that draws you in. So, in conclusion, what can I say? I love this series. Eventually, I'll come up with some sort of unbearable, like 1 out of 10 bears rating system, whatever. But for now, this is a 10 out of 10 as a series. The individual books are all 10 out of 10 as far as individual books go. I still wish I had my original paperback, because I love that cover art because as a child. I do have the one below, the one called Riddle of Stars. That's an actual snapshot of my book, my well-worn book that I've read since I wore out those first 3 paperbacks when I was a kid. And I hope some of you follow me through with this and pick up and read this series. Maybe read some other books by Mrs. McKillip. I will probably down the line do some more reviews of her work. I've only read 2 other things by her, if I remember correctly, a short story and something else that's coming to my head, but I can't remember right now. And I remember when I was young, I wanted to get more into her stuff. It was hard to find, because when I was a kid, there was no Amazon or whatever. You could just order stuff online. And now that I'm older and have income, disposable income, she's an author I want to explore more. So thank you for listening. This has been Matt at Unbearable73. I hope you enjoyed my review. If you have any comments, questions, or criticism, put them down below, or shoot me up on Twitter, Parler, Gab, or Getter. I use all four of them. I have my links to that below as well. If you like it, give me a like. If you don't, give me a dislike if YouTube is finally turning on. Feel free to subscribe if you want more. I will be doing more book reviews. I'll probably talk about this in the vlog I'm going to post later, but this is my next book. This is one of my 5 favorite books. If you want to know what my 5 favorite books are, I'll do a video on that, telling you what they are and why. But this is the next one I will be reading and doing a review on. I've read this probably 7 or 8 times. And would have read it more if I hadn't kind of lost my copy for a couple of years and like it was in the wrong. It wasn't in a box. I've had my books packed away on and off for quite a few years because of moves and things like that. And this got stuck in a box, I think, with like old clothing or something. So, anyway. And it's hard to get because it's out of. I think it might be out of print because this author only published. I read 2 books and she passed away in 2005 or so. I want to do a bit of a profile on her when I do it. But this is my next one. This is like your thing. I'm Matt. This is Unbearable73, and I am out of here. Have a nice day.